Absinthe from the Body. Part 1. The Green Hour. Paris, 1887. The hour of absinthe arrived not with a bell or announcement, but with a soft change in the air. Outside, Montmartre breathed damp stone and horse sweat, the hill slick with evening rain. Inside Le Cercle de l'Absinthe, the lamps glowed low and yellow, turning glass into gold and faces into masks. Shadows clung to the corners like secrets unwilling to be overheard. The café was narrow and crooked, its tables scarred by decades of knives, rings, and restless hands. On the far wall, a cracked mirror reflected everything slightly wrong, as if Paris itself were drunk. Emile sat hunched forward, elbows braced on the table, watching the sugar cube dissolve beneath the slow drip of water. The absinthe louche clouded from emerald clarity into pale opalescence, like a dream forming against its will. "Too much water," Francois muttered, his sculptor's fingers twitching as if shaping the glass itself. "You drown it." Emile didn't look up. "You don't drown absinthe. You wake it gently." Across from them, Juliet smiled into her own glass. "You speak as though it listens." "It does," said Vincent van Gogh, softly, from beside her. "Everything listens, if you're quiet enough." Vincent's beard caught the lamplight in coppery threads. His eyes, always too bright, too awake, were fixed not on the table but on the far wall, where a poster peeled itself slowly free. He had been sketching again. He always was. The café owner tolerated it only because Vincent never asked permission and never paid for paper he took. Isabelle leaned against the wall near him, her dark hair pinned carelessly, her posture relaxed but alert. Models learned how to be still without being absent. She held her absinthe untouched, watching the men instead of drinking with them. Henri de Toulouse-Lautrec arrived late, as he often did, announcing himself with the thud of his cane and the scent of rain-soaked wool. He surveyed the table with amusement, his sharp eyes missing nothing. "Well," he said, settling in, "I see we've reached the stage where everyone believes they are a philosopher." "It's only the first glass," Francois said. "Then God help us by the third." A ripple of laughter passed around the table, easy and familiar. This was their ritual. Night after night, they gathered, painters, poets, sculptors, and those who inspired them, pretending that genius was communal, that hunger sharpened the mind, that poverty was merely another aesthetic choice. Paul Gauguin joined them last, removing his gloves with theatrical care. He kissed Isabelle's hand without asking and claimed a chair as if it had been waiting for him all along. "I've been thinking," he announced, as absinthe was poured for him without question. "That's never a good sign," Toulouse-Lautrec said dryly. Gauguin smiled. "Paris is too small for us." Emile stiffened. "You always say that." "And I'm always right." Vincent finally looked at him then. "Paris is large enough for suffering," he said. "That should be enough." Gauguin's eyes flickered, annoyance, perhaps, or calculation. "Suffering is only useful if it produces something." Juliet's pen paused above her notebook. "And if it doesn't? Then it's wasted." The conversation drifted, as it always did, toward arguments half-repeated and never resolved: art versus commerce, truth versus beauty, the virtue of obscurity. Absinthe loosened tongues and softened edges. Stories were told, retold, exaggerated. Vincent said little. When he did speak, it was with care, as though each word cost him something. He drank slowly, methodically. Between sips, he sketched. Emile noticed it first, not the sketching, but the book itself. It was small, bound in worn leather, its corners softened by use. Vincent kept it close, tucked inside his coat even now. When he opened it, his hand hovered protectively, shielding the page from wandering eyes. "What's that?" Emile asked, attempting casual curiosity. Vincent hesitated. "Just a fraction too long." "Nothing," he said. "Just thoughts." Gauguin leaned forward. "You're hiding it." Vincent's smile was thin. "Some things aren't meant to be shared yet." "That's not like you," Toulouse-Lautrec observed. Vincent shrugged. "I am changing." The word hung there heavy. Isabelle watched him closely now. She had seen Vincent at his most unguarded, had sat for him in silence so complete it felt like prayer. Whatever lay inside that book mattered deeply to him. More than paintings. More than money. Juliet closed her notebook. "Promise me something," she said quietly. "Whatever you become, don't let Paris decide for you." Vincent nodded, distracted, already turning the page. The night deepened. More glasses. More laughter. More confessions that would not be remembered clearly come morning. At some point, Francois stood to leave, muttering about early light and unfinished clay. Toulouse-Lautrec followed soon after, kissing Juliet's cheek and offering a bow so exaggerated it nearly toppled him. Gauguin lingered. "So," he said to Vincent, his voice low. "May I see it?" Vincent closed the book. "No." A pause. Not hostile, but sharp. Gauguin smiled again, but something behind it cooled. "One day," he said, standing, "you'll wish you'd shown me." Perhaps it was the absinthe. Perhaps it was the hour. But Emile felt, then, a quiet unease settle over the table, something already slipping out of alignment. When Vincent finally rose to leave, Isabelle noticed he tucked the sketchbook into his coat before pulling it on. Careful. Deliberate. Outside, the rain had stopped. Inside, the green fairy lingered. And no one, not one of them, could later say with certainty who was the last to see that book. Part 2. What was not there? Morning came to Montmartre reluctantly. The light crept up the hill in pale increments, dull and thin, as though the sun itself were uncertain it wished to be seen. Rain had washed the streets clean of last night's filth, but not its residue. The cobblestones glistened with a false innocence. Vincent woke with the familiar ache behind his eyes, the sort that felt less like pain and more like pressure, an idea insisting on being born. He lay still, listening to the sounds of the building, a woman coughing 2 rooms away, footsteps on the stair, the slow drip of water somewhere it should not have been. For a moment, he felt calm. Then he reached for his coat. It was folded neatly over the chair, exactly where he had placed it. He remembered doing so, remembered the deliberate care of it. The memory soothed him, briefly. He slipped his hand into the inner pocket. Nothing. Vincent sat up. He searched again, slower this time, his fingers probing fabric, seams, corners. The pocket was empty. His breath shortened. "No," he whispered. He tore the coat from the chair, shaking it as if the missing weight might fall free. It did not. He checked the floor, the table, beneath the bed. He searched the room in widening circles, the way one might search for a living thing that had escaped. Nothing. The sketchbook was gone. Emile had dreamed of drowning. He surfaced from sleep with a gasp, his sheets twisted around his legs. The dream clung to him, the sense of being pulled downward by something heavy and green. Absinthe again. Always absinthe. He dressed quickly, already late for nothing in particular, and headed downhill. Paris moved around him with its usual indifference. Painters hauled canvases. Shopkeepers swept doorways. Life, unremarkable and ongoing. He was halfway to Le Cercle de l'Absinthe when he saw Vincent. Vincent stood in the street as though abandoned there, coat open, hair uncombed, eyes wild with something close to fear. Emile had seen him agitated before, intense, certainly, and prone to despair, but this was different. This was panic stripped bare. "Vincent," Emile said. "What's wrong?" Vincent looked at him as if trying to place the word friend. "It's gone." Emile frowned. "What is?" "My book." The words landed with weight. Emile knew immediately which book Vincent meant. He had not seen the pages, but he had felt the gravity of it the night before, the way Vincent shielded it, the way Gauguin had watched. "When did you last have it?" Emile asked. Vincent's brow furrowed. "Last night. At the café." Emile swallowed. "Are you sure?" Vincent laughed, a brittle sound. "I'm not mad." "Not yet." They walked together in silence toward the café, their footsteps oddly out of sync. When they arrived, the door was still locked. The windows reflected their faces back at them, distorted and pale. "It could be somewhere else," Emile said. "You could have left it." I did not. Vincent turned to him sharply. I remember putting it in my coat. I remember leaving with it. Emile remembered too, remembered seeing Vincent tuck it away, remembered Isabelle watching him do it. But memory was a treacherous thing, especially when watered with absinthe. The cafe owner arrived soon after, grumbling as he unlocked the door. Inside, the room smelled of stale liquor and damp wood. The tables were just as they had been left, glasses overturned, sugar crumbs scattered like pale sand. Vincent scanned the room desperately. Sit, Emile said gently. Vincent did not sit. They searched, though neither truly believed they would find anything. Under tables. Behind chairs. Along the walls. The sketchbook did not materialize. Emile felt a tightening in his chest. If the book had been lost in the street, there might be hope. But here, among friends, something darker suggested itself. Who else was here? Emile asked. Vincent's mouth worked soundlessly for a moment. Everyone. Juliet arrived just after noon, her expression already troubled. She had received Vincent's message, hurried, smudged, desperate. She listened as he spoke, her eyes never leaving his face. And you're certain it's missing, she said. Yes. She nodded once, slowly. Then someone took it. The word someone seemed to echo. Francois joined them next, apologetic and bleary-eyed. Isabelle followed, her composure carefully assembled. Toulouse-Lautrec arrived last, leaning heavily on his cane, his humor absent. Gauguin did not come. They sat around the same table as the night before, the absence between them more tangible than any presence. Let us be clear, Toulouse-Lautrec said finally. This is not a misunderstanding. This is theft. Francois shifted uncomfortably. We were all drunk. All the more reason, Juliet said. Drink does not invent desire. It only reveals it. Eyes flickered. No one spoke. Vincent's hands trembled. I did not mean for it to be seen, he said quietly. There are things in that book, unfinished things. Things I am not ready to defend. Could you reproduce them? Francois asked. Vincent shook his head. Not as they were. Silence pressed in. Emile felt heat creep up his neck. He thought of Gauguin's words, one day, you'll wish you'd shown me. He thought of ambition, of how easily admiration curdled into hunger. We should speak to Gauguin, he said. Isabelle stiffened. Why? He asked about the book. So did others, she replied sharply. Vincent looked at her, startled. Who? She hesitated, just long enough. You, Toulouse-Lautrec said softly, watching her, are holding something back. Isabelle met his gaze, unflinching. So are all of you. The accusation hung there, unclaimed but undeniable. Outside, Paris continued as it always had, indifferent to stolen dreams. Inside the cafe, trust began to fracture. And somewhere in the city, a small leather sketchbook changed hands for the first time. Part 3, Fractures in the Glass. Paris had a way of pretending nothing was wrong. The city hummed, carts rattled, voices rose and fell in cafés, while beneath it all something quietly splintered. The group dispersed from Le Cercle de l'Absinthe with no resolution, only an unspoken agreement, they would not involve the police. Not yet. Perhaps not ever. Vincent returned to his room alone. He tried to paint. He failed. The canvas stared back at him, mute and accusing. Every line he attempted felt derivative, hollow. The images from the missing sketchbook crowded his thoughts, the way his hand had moved without permission, the shapes that had emerged before he understood them himself. He pressed his palms against his eyes. They will misunderstand it, he thought. Whoever has it. A knock startled him. He opened the door to find Gauguin. You didn't come this morning, Vincent said flatly. Gauguin stepped inside without asking. He took in the room, the unfinished canvases, the bare floor. You've lost something, Gauguin said. Vincent turned slowly. Did you take it? The question hung between them, naked and immediate. Gauguin did not answer at once. He removed his hat, set it carefully on the table. "If I had," he said, "I wouldn't be standing here." "That is not an answer." "No," Gauguin agreed. "It is a challenge." Vincent's hands clenched. "You asked to see it. You knew it mattered." Gauguin's voice softened. "I knew it was important. I did not know you would unravel without it." Silence. Then Gauguin reached into his coat and withdrew a folded sheet of paper. Vincent froze. Gauguin unfolded it and held it up. It was a sketch, rough, hurried, unmistakably Vincent's hand. A fragment. A study of light over rooftops, the perspective slightly distorted, the lines vibrating with nervous energy. "I found this near the café this morning," Gauguin said. "On the street." Vincent stared. "That was in the book." "Yes." Relief and dread collided in his chest. "Then you have it?" Gauguin shook his head. "If I had the book, I would not need the page." Vincent took the paper with shaking fingers. The edge was torn. Deliberately. "Someone removed this," Vincent whispered. Gauguin watched him carefully. "Someone who wanted proof." "Proof of what?" Gauguin smiled thinly. "Of your future." Elsewhere, Emile sat in his studio, staring at his own work with mounting disgust. Every canvas felt second-hand. He had once believed that talent alone would distinguish him. Now he wondered if proximity was enough. A knock at the door. François entered, hat in hand, his expression strained. "I've been thinking," François said. "About last night." "So have I." François hesitated. "Do you remember leaving the café?" Emile nodded. "Yes." "With Vincent?" "Yes." "After Gauguin?" "Yes." François exhaled slowly. "Because I don't." Emile frowned. "What do you mean?" "I remember standing. I remember laughing. And then I remember waking up at home." The implication settled between them. "You think you took it," Emile said. "I think I could have," François replied hoarsely. "And not known." Emile studied him. François's hands were steady, but his eyes were not. "What would you do with it?" Emile asked. François looked away. "I don't know." "Sell it." "Copy it." "Burn it." The honesty was unsettling. "You should tell Vincent," Emile said. François nodded, but neither of them believed he would. Juliet and Isabelle walked together along the Seine, the water moving sluggishly beneath a grey sky. "You're angry with me," Isabelle said. Juliet did not deny it. "You were watching everyone last night." "So were you." "Yes," Juliet said. "But I wasn't hiding anything." Isabelle stopped. "Do you think I took it?" "I think you know more than you're saying." Isabelle's jaw tightened. "I saw Gauguin leave after Vincent. I saw you speaking to Toulouse-Lautrec. I saw Emile staring at Vincent like a man measuring a doorway." Juliet's pen hovered at her side, useless without paper. "You're deflecting." Isabelle stepped closer. "And you're afraid." "Of what?" "That this group is not what you thought." Juliet said nothing. Isabelle continued softly, "Someone is going to use that book. Not to understand Vincent, but to eclipse him." That evening, Toulouse-Lautrec sat alone at a café farther down the hill, nursing a glass of wine. He sketched idly on a napkin, but his attention was elsewhere. He had noticed something the night before, something small, easily missed. Someone had stayed behind after Vincent left. He could not remember who. But he intended to find out. Part 4, The False Trail. The exhibition opened on a Thursday. It was small, hastily assembled, and poorly lit, an amateur affair by Parisian standards. But word traveled fast when names were involved, and by late afternoon the room was crowded with students, critics, and the merely curious. Emile stood near the back, arms crossed, studying the walls with a growing sense of dread. François' work dominated the space. The sculptures were new, too new. Plaster still smelled faintly damp, and the forms carried a restless urgency that bordered on desperation. One piece in particular drew attention, a twisted figure, head bowed, body contorted as though pressed inward by an invisible weight. Emile felt his breath catch. The posture was wrong for Francois. It was Vincent. Or rather, it was Vincent as Vincent had never shown him before. Juliet arrived moments later and froze beside him. "Tell me I'm imagining it," she whispered. "You're not." Across the room, Vincent stood very still. He had not known Francois was exhibiting. No one had told him. The invitation had come that morning, vague and oddly insistent. He had arrived curious and left hollow. He approached the sculpture slowly. The lines were unmistakable. Not Francois's hand, but Francois's interpretation of Vincent's hand. The same nervous tension. The same warped perspective. The same raw inwardness. And at the base of the sculpture, carved shallow but legible, was a symbol. A small, rough star. Vincent staggered back as though struck. Francois noticed him then. For a moment, something like relief crossed Francois's face, followed quickly by terror. "You," Vincent said hoarsely. "Where did you get this?" Francois swallowed. "I." "Answer me." "I didn't steal it," Francois said too quickly. The room quieted. "I didn't take your book," Francois insisted. "But I saw it." The words rippled outward. "When?" Emile demanded. "After you all left," Francois said, voice shaking. "I came back for my tools." The café was empty. The book was on the table. Vincent shook his head. "No." "I swear it," Francois said. "I opened it." "I shouldn't have." "I only looked." "And the page?" Juliet asked. "The torn page." Francois hesitated. "I took one," he admitted. "I didn't think." Gasps. Murmurs. "You took a page," Vincent whispered. "I was afraid it would be lost," Francois said. "I was afraid no one would ever see it. I was afraid you wouldn't survive long enough to show it." Silence fell heavy and absolute. "And the rest of it?" Toulouse-Lautrec asked from the doorway. Francois shook his head. "I left it there." Vincent turned away, nausea rising. Gauguin stepped forward. "You took a page. You copied the work. You profited from it." "I did not profit," Francois snapped. "I showed it. That's all." "Without permission," Gauguin said. The accusation was complete. It made sense. It satisfied the need for an answer. Vincent felt something in him crack. "Give it back," he said. "All of it." Francois spread his hands helplessly. "I don't have the book." "You lie," Vincent said. "I don't." The exhibition dissolved into whispers. Judgment was swift, unnuanced. Emile watched Francois fold in on himself, watched Vincent turn away, watched something precious collapse under the weight of certainty. But Toulouse-Lautrec did not move. He stared at the sculpture, at the star carved into its base. That star was wrong. Francois had never seen a star before. Toulouse-Lautrec knew this. That night, Vincent burned the torn page. He watched it curl and blacken, the lines he had once trusted turning to ash. Isabelle stood with him, saying nothing. "You don't believe him," she said eventually. Vincent's voice was dull. "I believe he is capable of it. Capability is not guilt." Vincent did not answer. Elsewhere, Francois sat alone in his studio, staring at his hands. And in a room not far away, Toulouse-Lautrec poured himself another glass and began to think very carefully. Part 5, The Shape of the Lie. Toulouse-Lautrec did not sleep. Sleep was a luxury for people who believed answers arrived on their own. Instead, he sat at his narrow desk, a single lamp burning low, replaying the night in fragments, gestures, pauses, the direction of a gaze. The star. He sketched it again on a scrap of paper. Rough, asymmetrical. Not decorative. Intentional. Vincent had only begun using it recently. Not as a signature, not even consciously, more like a compulsion. Toulouse-Lautrec had noticed it appearing in margins, in the negative spaces between forms. A private symbol. One not yet shared. Francois could not have known it. Neither could Emile. Nor Juliet. Nor Isabelle. Which left only one person who would recognize its importance immediately and understand how to weaponize it. Paul Gauguin. Toulouse-Lautrec found him at dawn, already dressed, already packed. "You're leaving early," Toulouse-Lautrec said. Gauguin paused, hand resting on his bag. "Paris is becoming tedious." "You took the book," Toulouse-Lautrec said mildly. Gauguin did not turn around. "That's an accusation," Gauguin replied. "No," Toulouse-Lautrec said. "It's an observation." Silence stretched. Finally, Gauguin faced him. His expression was calm, almost amused. "If I had it, I'd be gone already." "You are," Toulouse-Lautrec said. Gauguin smiled faintly. "Vincent is too fragile to protect himself. Someone had to ensure the work survived him." "You mean ensure you survived obscurity?" Gauguin stepped closer. "Do you know what happens to men like Vincent? They burn brightly, briefly, and are buried under louder names. And you decided that names should be yours." Gauguin exhaled. "I decided the work deserved ambition." Toulouse-Lautrec's voice sharpened. "You tore a page to create proof." "Yes." "You let Francois take the blame." "I allowed misunderstanding to do its work." "You planned to reframe Vincent's ideas as influence rather than origin." Gauguin said nothing. That silence was confession enough. "Where is it?" Toulouse-Lautrec asked. Gauguin hesitated. Then, slowly, he reached into his bag and withdrew the sketchbook. Worn leather. Soft corners. Heavy with consequence. "You won't understand," Gauguin said. "History doesn't remember sincerity. It remembers boldness." Toulouse-Lautrec took the book. "History," he said quietly, "has a way of correcting theft." The confrontation did not happen publicly. Toulouse-Lautrec gathered them that evening, not at the café, but in Vincent's room. No absinthe. No witnesses. Just truth. Vincent sat on the bed, pale and hollow-eyed. Francois stood near the window, ashamed but defiant. Juliet held her notebook closed. Isabelle leaned against the wall, unreadable. Gauguin arrived last. Toulouse-Lautrec placed the sketchbook on the table. Vincent stared at it as though it might vanish again. "I didn't mean to destroy you," Gauguin said, "too late." "You didn't mean to save me either," Vincent replied. Francois swore softly. "You let them think it was me." Gauguin met his gaze. "You let them believe it." Juliet spoke then, her voice steady. "You understood exactly how we would turn on each other." Gauguin said nothing. Isabelle finally moved. She took the book and handed it to Vincent, her fingers brushing his. "Go," she said to Gauguin. He hesitated, then obeyed. No one watched him leave. Later, when the room had emptied, Vincent opened the sketchbook again. Everything was there. But something had changed. Not the work, the belief. He closed it carefully. "I don't think I'll ever show it," he said. Toulouse-Lautrec nodded. "You don't have to. History will find it anyway." Vincent smiled faintly. "I hope it waits until I'm ready." Outside, Paris continued to hum. Inside, a betrayal settled into memory, quiet, unresolved, and permanent. Part 6. What remains? Paris did not mark the moment when the circle broke. There was no argument in the street, no final toast, no declaration of endings. The café remained open. The absinthe still flowed. But something essential had withdrawn, like a tide that no one noticed until the shore was left bare. Francois left Montmartre within the month. He did not announce it. One day his studio was simply empty, the plaster dust swept away, the windows bare. A few sculptures surfaced later in provincial salons, stripped of their urgency, safer and quieter. No one connected them to Vincent again. Francois did not try. Juliette published a small book of poems the following spring. Only a handful of copies sold. Critics called it intimate and unfashionable, which was Parisian shorthand for invisible. She did not mind. In one poem, unnamed and unremarked, she wrote of a green hour that turned friends into strangers. Vincent never said whether he recognized himself in it. Isabelle stopped modeling. She married a man whose name did not appear in newspapers and lived a life that did not require stillness. Once, years later, she stood before a painting in a small gallery and felt an inexplicable tightening in her chest. She left before she could place it. Toulouse-Lautrec continued to watch. He painted what others missed: bent postures, fleeting expressions, the unguarded moments between intention and collapse. He never spoke publicly of the sketchbook. Some things, he believed, were preserved best by silence. Gauguin left Paris soon after. He traveled farther than the rest, louder and more defiantly. He spoke often of influence and originality, of escape and rebirth. In letters, he occasionally mentioned a man who had taught him something about suffering. He never mentioned theft. History would argue with him later. Vincent kept the sketchbook hidden. It moved with him from room to room, city to city, wrapped in cloth, tucked beneath clothing, protected not from loss but from misunderstanding. He returned to it during his darkest hours and his clearest ones. He did not copy from it. He did not correct it. He let it remain what it was, evidence of becoming. On some nights, he drank absinthe alone. On others, not at all. Years later, long after the circle had dissolved, a young man would open a trunk and find a small leather book, its pages dense with lines that seemed to vibrate even in stillness. Scholars would argue over dates, over influence, over what had been known and when. They would never know how close it had come to disappearing. They would never know the price of its survival. Emile stood before one of Vincent's paintings long after Vincent himself was gone. The crowd pressed in behind him, murmuring reverently. Emile heard none of it. He studied the surface, the movement, the color, the unmistakable certainty of it. He thought of absinthe and rain, of laughter and envy, of a book that had nearly been stolen by history itself. He wondered, not for the first time, whether any of them had truly understood what they were witnessing. The answer, he knew, was no. And yet, something had endured. Not the friendships. Not the café. Not even the certainty of truth. But the work. And that, Vincent would have said, was enough. END